Okay, it's recording. Everybody should have something that popped up on their screen. And like I said, we'll record the very beginning of this. That way people who wanted to be here but can't can watch it in the future. It appears to be working this time. I'll mute everybody during the discussion or during the presentation, and then as the discussion starts, I will stop the recording and we can unmute people and so you can discuss more freely. I would introduce Keith, but everybody knows and loves him, so I'm going to not do that, except to go dark and say, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you bringing everybody together for this talk and this way to see each other's full faces. So nice to see everybody's smiling faces. So I'm going to leave you to it, Keith. Thanks again, and we'll check in later.
All right. Thanks, Alan. Well, I'm sorry to see you all here. It's our subject, you know. It's, you know, I've done this presentation several times, and it's been a while since I've done it, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to read most of it, if you don't mind. There's so many things I want to get across, and I'm afraid if I do it on my own memory, I will leave out half of it out. So, I know that the subject of depression is a depressing one. However, it is an issue that's always nearby, especially in a community like ours, where loneliness brought on by ever-increasing loss of spouses and family members and old friends, and the self-isolation required by COVID restrictions are taking their toll on the mental energy and mood. These things can happen to any of us at almost any time. I'm here to tell you that depression or feeling down is not a character flaw. No more than it's not your fault and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just a fact. In a way, it's kind of like diabetes in that where your body stops producing the chemicals it needs to operate correctly. But replacement chemicals or medications are available to correct both issues. So remember that it's not you, it's a chemical imbalance, as though you weren't getting enough insulin type of a situation. First, I'm going to give you my qualifications for being able to discuss this topic of depression. I'm not a therapist, and I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a social worker. I'm a patient. I know intimately the ins and outs of depression, having lived with the disease for several years. My daughter, who must have gotten her sense of humor from her mother, calls me a turd because I have what is called treatment-resistant depression, TRD. And I was first diagnosed with it in 1988, some 33 years ago. However, what I know now about the symptoms and so on, I think I had it as a child also. Since 1988, I've been on and off of 24 different antidepressant medications, enduring the agonizing roller coaster ride of each, taking 2 weeks to get on to a therapeutic dose, 2 weeks to determine if it was effective. If it was ineffective, 2 more weeks of increase with an increased dose, 2 weeks to see if that was effective. And then if it didn't work, 2 weeks to taper off and 2 weeks for it to get out of my system. So each medication took about 10 to 12 weeks to try. All that time I was feeling depressed and down, wondering if I'd ever get out of the hole. And then we'd start on a new one, and I'd always be anxious to start a new one, anxious in a positive sense, because I was hoping that this would be the one. And then to be thrown under the bus when it didn't work was always very hard, and it put me deeper into the hole. My hopes would be raised with each new start, but increasing depths resulted when each one of them failed. One of the medications gave me a modicum of success, allowing me to be unsad for about 8 years before it too failed to work. And unsad for me means somewhere between unhappy and happy. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't really so sad that I was thinking of suicide. But it was like being in a pool of water where the water is right here at your nose level. You can breathe, but you don't want to breathe too hard. And I was that way for about 8 years, but that was great, compared to where I'd been. So the most recent antidepressant medication prescription I've been on, issued about 9 years ago, has been working so well, I've actually been happy for the first time in 33 years. Right there. Prior to the medication that I'm taking now, I've had over 50 electroshock treatments, 30 deep brain magnetic stimulation treatments, and none of them did much for me in the long term. They did in the short term, but they didn't hold. I've had years of individual and group therapy and cognitive therapy talks. I've had 5 2 to 3 week stays in 5 different psychiatric wards because of thoughts of suicide. Some of you are probably wondering why I'm willing to stand before you and air my dirty linen. And my answer is, it's not dirty linen any more than diabetes is. Besides, I've made it my cause to destigmatize what many families keep secret or only whisper about among adult family members. It was once a secret in my family too. One of the first questions my psychiatrist asked me in 1988 was if there was a history of depression in the family, to which I answered, no, not that I'd ever heard of. He implored me to ask. To my big surprise, I found out from my mother that there was indeed a history. Her grandmother had died in this mental institution from, the cause of death was called mania, in 1928 at the age of 60. One of her uncles committed suicide with strychnine poisoning at the age of 41. Another uncle killed himself from a shotgun at the age of 67. And her father, my grandfather, died of a heart attack while receiving electroshock treatment in 1940, the age of 60, 2 years before I was born. Yep, my family kept the secret really well. If I'd known the potential inheritable, if I'd known this potentially inheritable disease and knew the warning signs, could I have sought help earlier and perhaps not be such a turd? Possibly. So I've notified all known descendants of my mother's side of the family of this history. I've given them a list of the symptoms and urged them to seek help early if necessary. Now, not all depressions are the same. Most are not inherited like mine. Rather, depression can result from a buildup of stressful experiences and/or situations. A psychiatrist will diagnose it by a combination of symptoms and their duration. Can you put up the first slide, Alan?
Yes, just a moment.
Thank you. Major depression is, how do I get rid of this thing right in the center of my screen, Alan, is this, it's being recorded.
Oh, I think you just hit OK on that.
I can't get my cursor to go over there. Oh, it's on a different, hold on. There we go. Okay, now, thank you.
I'll edit out that part.
Okay, so major depression, psychiatrists will diagnose it as being 5 or more of the following that happen every day for a period of 2 weeks. a depressed mood, being sad or empty or hopeless, no interest in pleasure in doing things that were once pleasurable, increase or decrease in appetite and insomnia, and then what they call psychomotor retardation, which is slow thinking and slow movement, fatigue or no energy, worthlessness or inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to concentrate or indecisiveness, and recurrent thoughts of suicide. Thank you. So, and chronic major depression are 5 or more of the same things, most days over a period of 2 years. And that's closer to what I have. If you've never experienced major depression, your reaction to one in such a crisis may well be, oh, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get on with life. It's like telling a mother who's holding her dead child to get over it. You can always have another one. Depression doesn't come with bootstraps attached, and a mother can't just get over it. I've tried for many years to describe the mental pain, which was a constant in my life. I needed to find the words for family and friends for whom understanding the illness would mean the most. They interacted with me on a daily basis. You couldn't understand why their loved one would well up in tears for no apparent reason, who wouldn't speak for hours, or couldn't endure loud noises or even small crowds. It's even difficult for me to describe those deep feelings once I'd had periods of remission from the depression. But over the years that followed my eventual recovery, I've come up with a few words that hopefully help define the disease as it related to me. So, using examples which you may or may not have experienced, the following events should give you a sense of the mental pain that I felt. First of all is loneliness. Pretend that you're away from your parents' home for the very first time, at camp or a church retreat. There are no telephones, so you can't call home. You don't know anybody, you don't recognize anyone, and you don't want to be there. You're surrounded. Oops. Hold on. You're surrounded, but still very homesick and lonely. Number 2, hopelessness. From your vantage point, you can see a full school bus and a fast-moving semi-truck about to collide at an intersection. They can't see each other and you can't warn them. You know that there's no possible way that anybody will survive it, and you feel utterly hopeless. Number 3, uselessness. You have 2 broken legs and you can't walk. Good friends are trapped under a collapsing building, and there aren't enough rescue workers to do the work of getting them out. Unable to move your legs, you can only watch as your friends scream for help as the building starts to crumble. You feel totally useless. Number 4, fatigue. You stayed up for 72 hours straight studying for finals, using no-dos and coffee to keep you awake. When finals are over, you have the time to sleep, but other students in a nearby are celebrating with a very loud party. The fatigue is mind-numbing and the worst you've ever experienced. Number 5, sadness. You just lost your mother, a sibling, or a child that you love very much. The sudden accident caught you off guard and left you unprepared for the weighty loss. The deep sadness that you feel is all consuming and relentless. You can barely breathe. Brain fog. Your thinking process is not linear, but random and circular, taking away your ability to solve once easy problems, remembering events in a chronological way, and preventing you from holding down a good paying job. Number 7, self-worth. Sex as an activity is seldom possible with depression. Libido is the first pleasure to leave and the last one to return. Neither desire nor for men the ability to perform is even remotely present. The feeling of shame and self-worth adds another layer to the depression. And number 8, guilt. You did something illegal and you did not speak up when your best friend got blamed for it. You said nothing when he got punished, and the guilt is so strong that it too damages your self-worth. Now, any one of these pains is difficult to endure by itself. But if you can imagine living with all of these feelings all at the same time, all day, every day, for a period of years, is the pain of depression. At times I felt that suicide was a rational option, and I could no longer endure the relentless ache in my soul. I didn't follow through on those plans, but others unfortunately do, thinking that death is better than spending a life filled with such misery. So this is the pain and depression that I talk about. I ask you to try to understand it so that you realize that depression is a real disease. I may be a character and I may be flawed, but depression is neither the cause nor the effect of that flaw. Excuse me. I've survived the disease with lots of help, love, and the right medication. The disease re-enters my life periodically, but I now know the warning signs, and I am more able and more willing to get help when I need it. I also have set in place a set of coping skills, coping strategies, that seem to work for me, and they are the key to my continued survival. My coping skills are, Alan, if you could put that second one up, I'd appreciate it. Know the warning signs: fatigue, lack of sleep, no incentive to do anything, sadness, and that type of thing. Keep a journal, which, by the way, I've kept a journal since 1988. Take up about 2 feet of space on my bookcase. And then I found out that I went back and looked at them. I only wrote when I was feeling sad. So it's really hard to read because there's absolutely nothing positive in it. But when you keep a journal, you put down your thoughts. You don't worry about correct spelling or is it prose or is it good or is it not good? It doesn't make any difference. It may just be just random thoughts or stream stream of consciousness writing, and that's just fine. It's the idea that it is therapeutic, and I still keep the journal. I don't do it every day. like I did, but it still keeps me grounded. Do a mental check against the warning signs, and then record those in the journal. And I suggest that because it will, when you are, if you ever go see a psychiatrist or anybody for help, they would be able to, you would be able to recall, yes, I've had 2 weeks of feeling this way and 2 weeks of feeling this way and that type of thing. Whereas if you don't record it, you lose track of it. If I think I may be getting depressed, I call someone. I have a person that has been my dry shoulder and for years, and he knows all about me and my issues, and he's just a rock. I call him. I ask for help, and then I try to call other people 2 or 3 times a week, which doesn't seem like much, but when you're depressed, the weight of that receiver is about 10,000 pounds. To try and lift it and make a dial, to dial somebody up, is one of the hardest things there is to do, because it sets you, I don't know what it is, why it's so hard, but it is. It's very hard to do. Very important to do self-care, to take a bath, clean your living space, make your bed, and get dressed every morning. Every morning, not in the afternoon. You don't walk around in your slippers and your bathrobe and your pajamas until 5 and then get dressed for dinner and then change back into them right after dinner. So you feel better, you feel more alive when you've done all these things, and it's important that you do it. So lower expectations, or first of all, exercise, even just a little bit, just to go outside and breathe the fresh air is important. Rain or shine, just to get out and out of the house for a bit. Lower your expectations on how much you can do. Lower your expectations on the quality of the work that you do. That's a hard one for me, being a perfectionist that I was and am accused of still being, but I know the difference of what I was and where I am now, and it's all mental. So, but it's really hard to lower your expectations, but you don't have the energy to do anything else except beat yourself up when you don't meet your expectations. And then I always make a very short list of things to do every day, and I try to get them done. The shorter the list, the higher the chance of you getting them done, which helps your whole attitude toward doing things. If you get a short list of things done, you can always add to the list and then really feel good about it. Or you can make a big long list that includes roofing the house and never get it all done, and you feel like crap every time because you didn't get to the end of the list. I speak from long experience on this. And the last thing is to see a professional therapist. That's key, but sometimes you could see a counselor, a church deacon or a pastor or a priest. They have some degree of knowledge in helping people with problems like this. And you may not have to see a psychiatrist, but don't be afraid of a psychiatrist, and don't worry, no one's going to know except you. I'm proud of the fact that I am still seeing a psychiatrist every 3 months, and the idea that I lived long enough to say that is testimony to what they've done for me. Okay, Alan, thank you. I've made this presentation several times to nursing students, church groups, and the Hearthstone. And the most often asked questions have been, what is the best way to help a friend whom I suspect to be being depressed? What do I say to someone who tells me that they are feeling low or sad? And when I call a depressed friend, he seldom wants to talk. Should I continue to call him? And if I do, what should I try to get him to talk? What kind of advice can I give? The best way to help a friend is to just listen without judgment, which is kind of hard to do, really, to just listen without judgment. For me, the more I verbalize my anxieties, the less power they had over me. So I had to talk. The poor souls that had to listen, I really love them. It may be burdensome to you, but it's therapeutic for the person who has depression. But don't give advice, period. I say that in capital letters, don't give advice. Because when you do, if you never experienced it and you give advice, it rings very hollow. You know, why should I listen to you? You don't even know what it's like, you know. One of the first questions I ask a new psychiatrist every time is, have you ever been depressed? And depending upon their answer, I know how I'm going to do. If they say, like most of them say, no, but I treated a lot of them, and I'd say, well, yeah, okay, I don't trust you. If they say, no, I haven't, I don't know what it's like, I hope you can tell me. That's the one I want, because he's being honest with me. So in the same regard, if you give advice without having been there, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Instead, I say, ask questions such as, have you thought of seeking professional help? I'm not saying you should get it. I'm just asking, have you thought of it? Plant the idea and let that person make the decision. A listening ear and a dry shoulder may be all you can provide. And I tell you, that's a big plus. And remember, you cannot solve the problem for them. They have to solve it themselves or with the help from somebody who knows what they're doing. When calling a friend who is depressed, don't start a conversation with, hi, how are you? Think about that question, how are you? You know, that's from somebody who's depressed. You say, have you got 4 hours? I'll tell you. You know, it's a big, huge question. He'll either lie to you and say, oh, I'm fine, and you know he isn't, or he'll feel obligated to go into some lengthy discussion which you don't have time for. Maybe. I always appreciated the person who started the conversation with, I was just thinking about you and thought I'd give you a call, period. If he doesn't want to talk, you've already sent him the message that you wanted to send, and that was, I care enough about you to let you know I'm calling you. My phone's ringing, I'm sorry. I shut the other one off, but I can't shut this one off. So, but by just asking that question, or just stating that I thought I'd give you a call, you're telling him I care about you. If you want to talk, I'm here. If you don't, I understand. And that's all. I sent the message. And that is a powerful way to get somebody to trust you to the point that they will talk. And that's a part of the issue. So the best advice I can give is don't give advice. And that's it. Thank you. So let me see now. I think I'm done.
You're
David,
done?
yeah, Alan, can you set it up?
I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll have the silent applause there. Thank you so much, Keith. It was amazing, as expected. And let's have the discussion flow. So here we go.